A Stanford neuroscientist with 75 published papers says change your behavior to change your brain. A chiropractor with 4 best-selling books says change your beliefs to change your biology. Millions follow both. But only one of them just got backed by a brand new study from UC San Diego. So who's actually right? These two are the biggest names in brain science right now. Andrew Huberman, the Stanford professor breaking down protocols for focus, sleep, and neuroplasticity. Joe Dispenza, the author and speaker, teaching millions to rewire their brains through meditation and belief. Their fans argue about them constantly. The internet treats them like rivals. But what does the actual science say? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where they agree, where they diverge, and which approach is actually backed by evidence. And the answer is not what you'd expect. And by the way, one of these two has invited the other onto his own podcast multiple times. That tells you something the internet debate always misses. Let's start with who these people actually are, because their backgrounds reveal everything about how they think and why their followers fight about them online. And I should warn you, the credentials gap between them is real, but it doesn't end the debate the way you'd expect. Andrew Huberman is an associate professor of neurobiology at Stanford University School of Medicine, PhD in neuroscience from UC Davis. Over 75 peer-reviewed articles in journals like Nature, Science, and Cell. His lab studies neuroplasticity, stress, focus, and performance. His podcast, Huberman Lab, has become one of the most popular science shows in the world. His approach is simple. Find the peer-reviewed research, extract the protocol, and give people tools they can use today. Why does his background matter? Because when someone with 75 papers in Nature tells you to do something, you should probably listen. Joe Dispenza studied biochemistry at Rutgers and holds a Bachelor of Science with an emphasis in neuroscience.
He earned his Doctor of Chiropractic degree from Life University, magna cum laude. His postgraduate training includes neuroscience, neuroplasticity, epigenetics, and mind-body medicine.
He's the author of 4 New York Times bestsellers, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, You Are the Placebo, Becoming Supernatural. His retreats sell out worldwide. Over 1 million YouTube subscribers and 52 million views. Now, if you just compared resumes, this debate would be over. But science doesn't work on resumes. It works on data. And that's where things get interesting. Huberman's entire framework starts with one idea. Change your behavior, and your brain will follow. He doesn't ask you to believe anything. He asks you to do things. Specific, measurable, science-backed things. And then your biology responds. Take his approach to neuroplasticity. Huberman cites research showing that focused attention, real, intense, effortful focus, triggers the release of acetylcholine and norepinephrine in the brain. These neurochemicals mark neural circuits for change. Then, during sleep and deep rest, the brain physically rewires those circuits. His formula is clean. Focus plus rest equals rewiring. His meditation approach follows the same logic. Huberman recommends a specific 13-minute daily meditation, backed by a study showing it increases focus and reduces stress. But he's precise about how to choose your practice. If you're already in an interoceptive state, aware of your internal sensations, he suggests an exteroceptive meditation, focusing outward, and vice versa. The goal is to practice going against your default state. That's what builds mental flexibility. He also developed the concept of non-sleep deep rest, NSDR, a protocol based on yoga nidra research. A 20-minute guided session can boost dopamine levels in the striatum by up to 60%. That's a massive neurochemical shift from just lying still and following instructions. The strength of Huberman's approach is clarity. Everything he recommends links back to a specific study. You can check his sources, you can replicate the protocol. But there's a limitation he rarely addresses. His framework is almost entirely behavior first. It optimizes the brain's hardware. But it avoids a deeper question. Can thought alone change biology? Can what you believe, feel, and imagine physically rewire your brain without any external protocol? That's exactly where Joe Dispenza enters the picture. Dispenza's framework flips Huberman's model on its head. Instead of behavior first, he starts with thought and emotion. Now, what I'm about to show you is a study that most Huberman fans don't even know exists, and it changes everything about this debate. But first, the framework. His central concept is what he calls the thinking-feeling loop. Here's how it works. Your thoughts produce emotions. Those emotions produce neurochemistry. That neurochemistry reinforces the same thoughts, and the cycle repeats, hundreds of times a day, mostly unconsciously. Over time, this loop becomes your personality, and your personality creates your personal reality. You don't just think negative thoughts, you become chemically addicted to the feelings those thoughts produce. Your cells literally develop receptor sites for the stress hormones, the cortisol, the adrenaline, and when you try to change, your body resists because it's withdrawing from its own chemistry. Dispenza's solution is meditation, but not the kind Huberman recommends. His meditations are 30 to 60 minutes long and involve a specific sequence. First, breath work to pull energy up the spine. Then a full body scan to become aware of the body in space. Then, heart-brain coherence, generating elevated emotions like gratitude, love, and awe to shift the body's chemistry. And finally, mental rehearsal, vividly imagining a new future self until the brain can't distinguish the imagined experience from reality. And that last part isn't just Dispenza's claim. There's a famous study where researchers divided non-pianists into two groups. One group physically practiced piano exercises for 5 days. The other group only imagined practicing, same exercises, same duration, but entirely in their minds. At the end, brain scans showed both groups grew the same new neural circuits. The brain couldn't tell the difference between real and imagined. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds like pseudoscience. I thought so too, until I read this study. In November 2025, researchers at UC San Diego published a study in the journal Communications Biology. They took 20 healthy adults through a 7-day residential meditation retreat led by Joe Dispenza, featuring approximately 33 hours of guided meditation and group healing practices. The results were striking. The brain's default mode network, the self-referential chatter center, the part of your brain that never shuts up, quieted dramatically during meditation. Isolated brain regions became synchronized, and here's the headline. The brain entered a hyper-connected state that researchers had previously only documented with psychedelic substances, without any drugs, just meditation. But it didn't stop at the brain. Blood plasma collected after the retreat, when applied to lab-grown neurons, made brain cells grow longer branches and form new connections. BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, essentially fertilizer for the brain, showed massive increases. The researchers also documented elevated endogenous opioids, changes in metabolic activity, immune activation, and shifts in gene expression and epigenetic markers. In 7 days, with no pharmaceutical intervention. A study from one of the most prestigious universities in the world just validated a chiropractor's meditation retreat. Let that sink in. Now here's what the internet debate always misses. And if you've made it this far, this is the part that makes the whole video worth it. Because these two agree on far more than they disagree. And where they agree, that's where the real science lives. Neuroplasticity is real. Both Huberman and Dispenza build their entire frameworks on the same foundational principle. The brain can physically change itself throughout life. New neural circuits can be formed. Old ones can be pruned. This is established neuroscience, supported by decades of research. Meditation physically changes the brain. Huberman cites studies showing meditation increases cortical thickness, reduces amygdala reactivity, and improves prefrontal cortex function. Dispenza's UC San Diego study shows meditation rewires the default mode network and increases BDNF. Different meditation styles, different emphasis, but the same conclusion. Meditation is not just relaxation, it's a neurological intervention.
Visualization and mental rehearsal work. Huberman has covered the science of mental rehearsal in episodes on learning and skill acquisition.
Dispenza uses mental rehearsal as the core of his meditation practice. Both cite overlapping research showing the brain activates the same circuits whether you perform an action or vividly imagine it. The subconscious runs most of your life. Huberman talks about this through the lens of habitual neural circuits and autonomic processes. Dispenza frames it as the body becoming the unconscious mind. Different language, same insight. Most of what you do, think, and feel today is a repetition of yesterday, running on autopilot. And here's something most people don't know. Huberman has invited Dispenza onto his podcast. Not once, multiple times. They've had long conversations about meditation, consciousness, the mind-body connection, and how belief shapes biology. If Huberman thought Dispenza was a fraud, he wouldn't give him that platform. The rivalry narrative? It's mostly internet fiction. These two respect each other's work. They're just approaching the same mountain from different sides. But they are not the same, and the differences matter. The quantum field. Dispenza talks extensively about the quantum field, a realm of infinite possibility that you can tap into through elevated emotional states during meditation. He uses language from quantum physics to describe consciousness and manifestation. Huberman never goes there. And most physicists would say that applying quantum mechanics to human consciousness is, at best, a metaphor, not established science. The quantum field, as Dispenza describes it, is not something you'll find in a peer-reviewed physics journal. Healing claims. Dispenza teaches that meditation can heal serious diseases, and his retreats feature testimonials of people recovering from chronic conditions. The UC San Diego study showed real biological changes, but it studied 20 healthy adults over 7 days. It did not study disease reversal. There is a difference between meditation changes your biology, which is proven, and meditation cures disease, which is a much larger claim that needs much larger studies. Huberman stays carefully with what the current evidence supports. And this is the exact point where most YouTube videos would tell you one side is right and the other is wrong. We're not going to do that, because that's not what the evidence says. Spiritual language versus scientific language. Dispenza uses words like supernatural, quantum, and infinite potential. Huberman uses words like protocol, mechanism, and peer-reviewed. This isn't just style. It shapes how each framework is received. Huberman's language appeals to skeptics. Dispenza's language appeals to seekers. And it's exactly this divide that creates the internet wars. And one more thing worth noting. Both face criticism. Dispenza is called a pseudoscientist who exaggerates claims and markets meditation as medicine. But Huberman has also been criticized by neuroscientists for cherry-picking evidence and oversimplifying complex research for his audience. Neither is immune to scrutiny, and that's how science should work. So who's right? Here's what I think, and what the evidence actually supports. Imagine a spectrum. On one end, you have pure protocol. Change your behavior, optimize your sleep, get sunlight, do NSDR, follow the data. This is Huberman's territory.
On the other end, you have pure belief. Change your thoughts, elevate your emotions, meditate for an hour, visualize your future self, trust the process. This is Dispenza's territory.
And the UC San Diego study just showed it works too, at least biologically. Most people pick one side. They're either Team Huberman or Team Dispenza. They either dismiss meditation as woo-woo or dismiss protocols as missing the point. But the strongest approach, the one supported by the most evidence, combines both. Use Huberman's protocols to optimize the hardware: sleep, light exposure, cold, NSDR, focused attention. These give your brain the best possible foundation for change. Then use Dispenza's methods to reprogram the software: meditation, heart coherence, mental rehearsal, elevated emotions. These reshape the neural patterns, the subconscious programming, the chemistry that keeps you stuck. Hardware and software, behavior and belief, protocol and practice. If you've been following one and ignoring the other, you're leaving half the power on the table. That's why this channel exists. Quantum Self lives in the center of that spectrum, where the science of the brain meets the science of the mind. Where we don't worship either side. We take what's proven, we flag what's speculative, and we give you protocols you can actually use. So where do you fall on the spectrum? Team Huberman, Team Dispenza, or somewhere in the middle? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this is your first time here, subscribe, because next video, we're breaking down the exact meditation protocol from that UC San Diego study, the one that rewired people's brains in 7 days, step by step. so you can try it yourself. I'll see you there.